Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. Can I start by introducing the top table? I'll start on my left with Councillor Liz Barrett, the Vice Convener. Fraser Croft, who's Strategic Lead for Environment and Infrastructure. On my right hand side, keeping me right as always, Adam Taylor from Democratic Services. And we've got Nigel the Taylor, who will be presenting on the decarbonisation strategy within this morning's meeting. Can I ask Adam to confirm any apologies and advise of members in attendance and online? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. We've had no formal apologies for the meeting this morning. We do, however, have one councillor online, so I'll just ask to confirm if you can hear us. Councillor Kigali, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
That's great. Thank you. And all other members are present in the chambers, Convener.
Thank you, Adam. Can I just ask everyone, just either in the room, raise your hands or use the chat box to get my attention if you have any questions or comments. Can I ask if anyone has any declarations of interest in respect to any of the items on business on the agenda this morning? Thank you. Can I ask if committee is happy to agree the minute from our last meeting on the 23rd of October 2024? Thank you. Just before we start, just want to say, a huge thank you to all the members and quite a few in the committee this morning who turned up on Earth Day to the litter pick on the Lade, and also a few days later there were a number of councillors also that turned up with the Tulloch Blooming Lade, I believe they're called, the group, who also done a litter pick on the Lade, and there was a huge amount of rubbish collected. And a big thanks to the officers and to Tulloch Blooming Lade for organising both the events. Right, if we just move straight on to the first item on the agenda, can I ask Annabelle O'Connell, Senior Green Space Officer, to introduce the report on ash dieback strategy? Thank you.
Thank you, Convener, Vice Convener, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to present to committee this ash dieback strategy produced by my team for your approval today. As you know, ash dieback is a fungal disease and a significant issue throughout the UK as it spreads and is progressively affecting more and more trees, with ash being the third most common broadleaf tree in Britain. Some trees are showing signs of resistance to the disease, which hopefully might lead to some recovery for the species, but there is no cure. All public and private sector land managers need to deal with the effects of this disease on trees within their control as per the Occupiers Liability Scotland Act 1960. And of the approximately 30,000 trees on council land, it is estimated that 1,900 of these are ash. And in addition to that, many roadside trees will be affected. The council also have a responsibility to road users to ensure that land managers bordering our road network of approximately 1,500 miles of road network. We need to ensure that they're dealing effectively with the trees in their ownership. So this ash dieback strategy proposes an efficient and effective method of dealing with the problem across Perth and Kinross in a prioritised and timescaled way over a period of about 5 years. This method to deal with the issue does require a significant additional funding, and in order to fully deliver this strategy, though I'm pleased to say that funding was set aside in the budget for this year and indeed next to allow a start to be made on the surveying and recording of all the trees. We are also developing a tender package for dealing with the highest risk trees first in that prioritised manner. So the officers who developed this strategy are also developing a tree planting strategy as one of the actions in the Climate Change and Sustainability Action Plan. So the impact of the disease affecting so many of our native trees in this country will clearly be addressed within this tree planting strategy, and outlining the approach and the plan for replacing these the loss of these trees. And the intention with the strategy for tree planting is to assist with maintaining the reputation that we have as a big tree country. We therefore have set out in the Ash Dieback strategy the action that is now needed to address the disease issue effectively, as the costs and risks will only increase as the disease progresses. We are therefore asking committee to approve this strategy, and convener, vice convener, I'm joined by my colleagues Andy Clegg, Community Green Space Manager, Callum Batchel, Green Space Coordinator, and also Magnus Morgan, our Tree and Woodland Officer, who would be happy to answer any questions relating to the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. I've already got one question in the chat. If anybody else has any questions, please get my attention through the chat or online. Angus, your first question.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I have a few questions on this. Thanks for bringing this forward. I have to say I agree entirely with the proposal that you're making, but I do have a few questions on the way, if I may. And can I begin by referring you to 3.1.4, which relates to the numbers of trees? And earlier on in the report, it says, I think it's the third largest or the third most common tree across Britain. But the ratio, we've got 30,000 trees on council lands, estimated 1,900 of those are ash. That doesn't seem to fit with that 1 in 3 across the UK. I just wondered if that number was correct.
Thank you for your question. Thank you. If I could refer that question to my colleague Callum Batchel, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So it's the third most common broadleaf tree in the UK. So it's that the figure also of total number of trees includes sort of coniferous trees as well.
Thank you, Angus. Grant, your question.
Thanks. I thought Angus maybe given us several questions, so you caught me a little bit unawares. It was just members of the public, and I see there is an option for them to report it, but how's that going to be made if members of the public, quite a lot of people living in rural areas, would recognise this, that could maybe assist the officers and point them in a direction of something that they could maybe go and look at when they're doing the survey?
Annabelle.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Leader. And I would like to refer that question also to Callum, who has an answer for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So trees can be reported the same way that any other dangerous tree can be reported. And when we get the report in, we can assess whether it's best to go out to one of our green space rangers, or if we've got our surveyors out, they can look at it as part of their surveys as well. And we are looking at putting together communications to allow the public and landowners to identify ash dieback more easily. So we're actually hoping that people do report all these dangerous trees to assist them identifying the priority areas.
Okay, because that's preempted my follow-up question was, is there going to, to be information sharing so that any of us are interested in going out walking or cycling would be confident in recognising A, an ash tree from an oak tree, and B, one that's unhealthy and one that's healthy. So that's going to be done, is it, Cal?
It is, yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I think path groups in there can play a big role within local communities in helping identify infected trees around core paths and that. Grant Stewart list.
Thank you, convener. Much of the report talks about ash trees next to the road network, and quite rightly, when we're looking at safety and economic impact that could have in the locality. Is there going to be a similar consideration for ash trees that could be on private land that are next to core path networks, play parks, and other infrastructure? And Councillor Anderson raised in our ward, there's an ash tree at Kinrossy Village Hall, and it's quite near a road network. So a long-winded question there. Are we looking at trees that could have an impact on private land on public spaces?
Thank you for your question, and Cal will be able to give us the breakdown of how that prioritisation takes place. Thank you, Cal.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So the priority areas that we'll be looking at are primarily council-owned trees, but as you rightly say, trees next to the road network. If we do get reports in of dangerous trees by core paths or other key bits of public infrastructure that aren't necessarily council-owned, we will endeavour to get in touch with the landowners to try and rectify the situation.
Thank you. And Andrew, your question.
Thank you, Honourable Convener. I'm delighted to see that there's a sort of replanting programme associated with this, and I'm just wondering what species of trees are being looked at for that replanting. I suspect it might depend on the location and site, and I understand that there are ash dieback resistant ash. Is the science associated with that strong enough and good enough for us to be able to plant replacement disease-resistant ashes? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor, and I would like to direct the answer to that one for our Tree and Woodland Officer, Magnus Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. In answer to your question, we have identified 4 native species which would replace ash. They show similar biodiversity assets and support a lot of the species that ash currently supports. And they are alder, sycamore, field maple, and Norway maple. As regards resistant trees, there are various species of foreign ash, such as the manna ash, which could be planted. However, they're not native species, and what the main aim is throughout the industry and the arboricultural network is to identify ash that are naturally resistant and use them as a breeding stock eventually to replace ash trees throughout the UK.
Thank you. Angus, are you okay just holding on and I'll let Councillor Cuthbert come in with his first question? Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. I'm just wondering, if we take the trees down, will there be value in the timber that's produced, and does that offset some of the costs? And is there a possibility of actually offering the trees, if you like, and the opportunity for people to take them down and remove them and recycle them? On top of that, I'm just wondering, I presume they will be recycled, and as I say, there should be value, I would have thought.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we have multiple solutions to deal with that timber, which I would like to ask Cal to just outline for us here. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So as part of our tree contractors contracts, the costs are reduced by them being able to take the timber for commercial use. The slight issue with trees with significantly progressed ash dieback as the timber becomes so brittle it's not particularly useful for commercial purposes. So if the trees are got to early enough, then it can be, but those with sort of stage 4 dieback may not be commercially usable. One of the options that we opt for with dangerous trees, depending on the site, is we'll leave the timber on site as it's got quite significant biodiversity advantages to leaving it on site. So where possible, we'll be doing that as well.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Jack Welch.
Thank you, convener. Just a follow on from that particular question, because it's raised in the report the value of deadwood as biodiversity it will be obviously then an element of a conflict of interest with the contractors to identify timber that they wish to take away as part of their contract and timber that should be left behind. My question is, but without onerous officer involvement time, which then reduces available monies to then run the programme, how is that going to be managed? Are you going to exchange photographs, site visits? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, councillor, and I believe Cal will be able to go into some detail of how we will manage that process. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, councillor. So usually when we issue works requests to our contractor, we'll specify at the time whether we want them to leave the timber on site or not. So that the decision on that will essentially be made prior to the contractor seeing the tree itself.
You okay with that, Jack? What a supplementary.
So is this being done as a tree by tree basis then, or a works package? I mean, I'm just wondering the actual process of that.
So it will be on a case by case basis. So in an area where there's a large number of trees to be taken out, that'll go as a package, but where it's individual trees, they'll go as individual works requests. We don't anticipate that we'll be using just one contractor for all of Perth and Kinross, just due to the scale of the number of trees that'll be coming out. Will likely be a network of different contractors. We hope to manage the contractors via a assistant tree and woodlands officer that we'd like to recruit next year. But failing that, it will be managed by ourselves and our infrastructure team.
Thank you. Thank you. Hugh, you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just say it's rather opportune time for this to be on the agenda, being a deciduous tree. There won't be many of them in leaf at this time yet. I think they're coming into leaf. And it's quite a distinctive leaf anyway, so it should be quite easy for people to recognise the tree when it is in leaf. I know down south in Leicestershire, my daughter's down there, and on their farm there's quite a lot of ash on it, but works are not happening very quickly down there, so we're probably, it's only come onto the agenda now as such up here, but it's been in a problem for a good few years. But I say that how it will be, Grant was saying about leaflets and everything else, showing the leaf, the
question
ready to hand out now. Is that the timescale of publicising the disease?
Time scales on the leaflet.
Thank you for your question. And we have details from Magnus, who can clarify how the survey process can be carried out according to the seasons. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. There is a model called the Devon model, which is used to identify the 4 stages of ash dieback. It has 2 forms, full summer leaf and bare twig, which you obviously use in winter. The lesions which ash dieback causes are clearly visible on the trees in winter and autumn after leaf fall. So it's incredibly easy to identify relevant species, the relevant individuals that have been attacked or groups that have been attacked.
Thank you. Thank you. Angus, your second question?
You'll be pleased to know that Councillor Parrott asked one of my questions, so we're down to just a couple more, convener. But on the topic that we were discussing just a minute ago about the value in the wood or the cost of the wood. So one thing that's always confused me, we don't actually employ our own tree surgeons. I know Dundee Council and Angus Council do, and I know Dundee Council you can rock up and buy timber from them to use as fuel in your house. And I see that in the report, I think it's £1.5 million we'll be spending on tree contractors to remove this. Did we ever look at the opportunity to employ our own tree surgeons, or perhaps use Dundee or Angus Council's tree surgeons to do this on our behalf?
It's
Thank you for
certainly
your
certainly been mentioned and chatted about, and I would hope it's certainly something we can look at. We can look at potentially going forward to see if there is any benefits within it. I would, Andy.
Yes, thanks, convener. Yes, we're looking at a number of options for procurement at the moment. Traditionally, all of our tree management for going back many years has been through private contractors. We have a framework for them that was, procured through the normal procurement processes. But certainly, if there's an option for collaborative working in some areas or over across the whole area with other councils, we'll certainly look at that. That's one of the steps we're taking at the moment with the resources that we've been allocated to look at the whole procurement exercise for this. So thank you.
Please.
And Andy, thanks for that. In relation to the value in the wood in terms of wood burning stoves, etc., is that something we're looking at? Because I've no concept of what a tree surgeon costs, but 1.5 million seems to be an awful lot of money.
I think, yes, the difficulty with ash dieback, it quite often may require sort of specialist equipment and that because of the nature of the sort of fragility of the tree as the disease progresses. But certainly the tree contractors, would estimate how much they can recover from selling firewood, or as Magnus said earlier, if the wood's caught early enough, it can be used for other purposes, and there'll be some sort of estimate done on that as to what the return is on the value of the wood, and that would come off the contract price that they quote.
Okay. Councillor Grant-Lane.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I really like, I think it's very apt, Councillor Anders' suggestion of a leaflet rather than any other sort of way of passing things out when we're talking about this. But my question is, does leaving the trees in situ not contribute to the spread of the disease, or is the overall situation beyond that now?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I would like to refer that question to Magnus. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. We've actually, as you just mentioned, reached a point where removal of disease material, frankly, isn't worth it because the disease is so widespread. And it's an airborne item anyway. It's not like it's infected through an insect or parasitic pathogen. So yeah, basically, there's no value in destroying the product from the trees itself. In fact, there is probably a lot of mileage in leaving certain stems out of sort of public sort of thoroughfares or road pathways as biodiverse, just for woodpeckers to feed on, etc., which won't cause any danger to the public.
Yeah, please do.
Is there anywhere in the world, or has it never happened, that the fungal disease can jump species?
No, it's totally confined to ash trees and ash trees alone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cuthbert. Your second question.
Thank you, convener. I'm putting my Tayside contracts hat on here. I'm just wondering if officers have thought to approach them, because obviously Angus and Dundee will have the same problem at some point. It would seem sensible that we look to sort of share that service with Tayside contracts, possibly.
Andy, do you want to come in and answer that one?
Yes, thank you, convener. Thanks, Councillor Cuthbert. Yes, I mean, we've actually just had very recent contact with Tayside Contracts offering a number of services across the council area. So we're in detailed discussions with them, and certainly that would be part of the procurement option as well, along with a number of other services we're considering to hasten to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Angus, you're number 3.
Thanks. If I can draw your attention to section 3, it references roadside trees, although my question's slightly wider. It says in the right at the bottom of the page, the landowner may be liable for the cost. So there isn't a week goes by at the moment without somebody in the Carstairs area phoning me to tell me that there's a hedge overgrown and the council should just come and cut it back and bill the landowner for doing so. So on a wider question than what we're talking about today, do the council ever actually just do that, and have we been successful in recovering the money?
Andy, do you want to come in with that one?
Yes, it's a continual discussion point. I don't know if we have actually successfully reclaimed the money. It's normally done through the Roads Maintenance Partnership, so we're working really closely with them on this initiative, and certainly that would be, well, our ideal position would be that the landowner would deal with the issue themselves. If we then have to come in and do it, given the scale of this, we'd certainly like to try our very best to ensure that we do recover as much funding as we can from private landowners, but that would maybe need to go through legal process. So we'd have to balance it out as to whether it's worth pursuing them through court. But I would hope that in most cases, you know, we would be successful with the land manager taking responsibility for it. And we've certainly consulted the Roads Maintenance Partnership and legal services in putting this paper together.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I'm putting a financial hat on this time. In terms of the disease, I don't know how fast it moves, but you tell us that category 4's got no value, it's brittle and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering if we're rolling this out quick enough, if a trees currently are category 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, if we leave it for 5 years, will they then be category 4 no value? Does that make economic sense that we should actually accelerate the programme and get the ones that are not that bad down earlier?
I think there's a balance in there somewhere, and it's not, you don't want to leave it to 4 because then it's brittle and they may have to bring platforms in where the costs go up. But I'm sure officers will answer it a lot better than I will. But doing it too early, then you might not know if it's a resilient tree as well. I think is the other key as well. So it's getting the right balance.
Thank you. If Cal, thank you, convener. Cal would like to be able to answer this question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, convener. So part of the issue, if we were to roll it out faster, we might be bottlenecked by contractor availability. As Andy said, a lot of the ash tree removal requires this specialist equipment. In terms of the prioritisation of trees to come out, this year we're hoping to complete a comprehensive survey of all ash trees within council land as well as on roadsides. And based on that, we'll be prioritising dangerous trees first because our priority is public safety in this. But if we are able to get through all those high priority trees from a safety perspective, then we would move on to lower stage trees and regain that economic value from them as well. But we will be prioritising the safety first on that.
Okay. Yeah. Any further questions? Just in moving this report, a huge thank you to Annabelle, Callum and Magnus and Andy for coming along this morning, and your expertise, you know, in numerous conveners meetings and pre-agendas. It's certainly been educational listening to the knowledge on this, and I'm sure we're in good hands as we move forward. Ash dieback is becoming a significant issue throughout the UK as the disease spreads and affects more and more trees. There is no such There is no cure as such, but fortunately some trees are showing signs of resistance and will hopefully lead to a future recovery for the species. In the meantime, all public and private sector land managers need to deal with the effects of the disease on trees within their control. It is estimated roughly 1,900 trees on council land will need action to reduce the longer-term risk of injury or damage as the trees become more brittle and die. In addition, the council have a responsibility to road users to ensure land managers bordering our 1,548 miles of road network are dealing effectively with trees in their own ownership. This ash dieback strategy proposes an efficient and effective method of proactively dealing with the problem across Perth and Kinross in a prioritised and time-scaled way. Significant additional funding will be needed to fully deliver the strategy and will be the subject of subsequent budget decisions out with this committee. In the meantime, I'm pleased to say funding was set aside in this year's budget for this year and next year to allow a start to the made on surveying and recording the trees and developing a tender package for dealing with the highest risk trees first. The officers who developed this strategy are also currently developing a tree planting strategy as one of the actions in the Climate Change and Sustainability Action Plan. This will clearly set out the principles, approach and plan for tree planting in all our green spaces, which will include suitable replacements for ash trees being lost. This will help to maintain our reputation as big tree country and the vital role trees play in the landscape of Perth and Kinross, as well as our commitment to combating climate change. As set out in the strategy, action is needed now to address ash dieback effectively, as costs and risks will only increase as the disease progresses. I am happy to accept the recommendation when the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Liz Barrett to second?
Thank you, Convener. Happy to second the report.
Do members have any comments on the report? Jack.
Thank you, Convener. Two comments, if that's okay. My first plea would be for officers to use, if possible, a readily available app called What 3 Words, which you can append and attach a photograph to. Members of the public, I think, would find that relatively straightforward to use, and I think it would avoid confusion around location of affected trees. My second comment is around that ash trees, where planted within hedges, have shown significant difference and resistance to ash dieback, but sometimes it requires assessment to when you identify lesions, that lesions haven't been caused by hedge cutting machinery as opposed to the disease itself. But it's just to note that that is a recognised, it offers a certain element of resilience to ash trees when in hedgerows. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Grant.
Thanks, Convener. I'd like to thank both yourself and the Vice Convener for bringing this to our attention, along with officers in the budget process. That's been very helpful and helped us to get ahead of the game. So it would be something that many of us wouldn't have had any knowledge of. So I'd like to thank you all for doing that. I think that the survey is the most important step in this process, and I believe that continuous surveying throughout the next few years will need to be put in place to monitor the speed at which various trees are succumbing to the disease. It shows that this council again is proactive rather than totally reactive, and because as with everything, early intervention is the most effective and cost effective solution in dealing with anything across all services. So I'd again like to thank officers for bringing forward this sensible and well thought out strategy for dealing with a problem that many people won't be aware of. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Angus, comment?
Yeah, just quickly, Convener, I completely agree with the proposal that officers are making. They're the experts. None of us are experts on this, so what they've suggested seems to make sense to me. If I can just touch on the issue of the cost of this, I said earlier on it was 1.5 million. Actually, just reading the notes again, it's nearer 1.9 million. So I'm really pleased to know that the officers are in discussion with other councils, and as we heard just earlier on, perhaps through Tayside contracts, to try and use resources that are already in the public sector to try and bring that cost down, which would be fantastic. And I look forward to hearing about those discussions in my role on Tayside contracts.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments in my chat. Is there any amendment for this? Can we agree the recommendations of the report? Just given a chance. Dave's just looking at me here. Just no, not really. Give ample opportunity in there. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Annabelle. Just moving on to item 5 on our paper fleet decarbonisation strategy, can I ask Nigel Taylor, Direct Services Manager, to introduce the report? Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Convener. And thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. This report describes a 5-year strategy, placing the council in a position to navigate through a changing governmental approach to achieving net zero in 2045. The plan for and speed of this approach has altered and will continue to do so, as both the UK and Scottish governments have adjusted their targets in response to different factors, such as the pace of technology change, infrastructure investment and availability, the cost and political and public appetite for low emission vehicles. In summary, therefore, our strategy is to gradually expand the number of electric cars on our pool car fleet, to continue with the rollout of charging infrastructure to designated hubs and depots and council facilities, with an increased focus on ensuring that PKC vehicles can be charged and be available for work use in the numbers that we require. We will consider different solutions to charging infrastructure, given the costs involved and the extent to which we require it, involving either PKC installing it and managing its own infrastructure, or inviting third parties to come in to get involved in what could be a number of different ways. The ongoing rollout of hydro-treated vegetable oil is something that will continue. We have 18 of our 26 bin trucks on HVO at the moment, and this saves us around 500 tonnes of carbon per annum. And by the end of this year, our carbon saving will have increased to around 725 tonnes, because we'll have all 26 of our vehicles on HVO by that time. Plans to convert all our HGVs, of which there are 80, obviously 26 of those are RCVs, onto HVO will depend on us monitoring the cost of HVO, which is currently 15 pence a litre more expensive than diesel. And also any change in technology will also have to be monitored, with potential advent of electric and hydrogen options for larger vehicles. The pace of change for which is well behind that of cars. So for the future, we envisage a mixed approach to our fleet, which will combine the use of HVO in heavies, electric for cars, and alongside a small number of diesel, petrol vehicles to reflect the rurality of some of our service delivery requirements. We would intend, with committee's consent, to do a separate report on describing the specifics of our approach to increasing our pool vehicle fleets by 30 in number over a 3-year period. It's approximately 10 per year. This should see an increase of our electric fleet from 5% to 10% over this period. Hydrogen will continue to be an important consideration, specifically the fact that Green Cat Energy, a specialist hydrogen company, are in place on Bin Eco Park, and PKC is heavily involved at the moment in consulting with Ricardo on the potential for hydrogen and our requirements for the future. So there's much work to do on this going forward. It's an exciting project, and we believe that we've got a measured, varied and pragmatic approach to managing this important change and being responsive to changing government targets whilst systematically decreasing the council's carbon footprint at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for that. I've got a couple of questions in the chat already, but anybody else with any questions, please populate the chat. Angus, your first question.
Yeah, if it's okay with you, I've got two very closely linked questions that are straightforward. Can I just go with them both? In the way that a business car driver would get a tax break through the government scheme for driving an EV, I wonder if that same scheme applies to council pool cars. And on a similar topic, the proposed additional chargers that we intend to put in place, will they be available for public use? And Councillor Lingworth seems to have trouble with his laptop and would like a question, please.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Yeah, so on your first question regarding tax, there is a road tax reduction on electric vehicles that the council can take advantage of. In terms, though, of other tax-related advantages, they are limited. The cost package is something that we would look at without tax being necessarily an issue in terms of the cost of an electric vehicle, which is higher than a typical petrol diesel vehicle. But we envisage the government may take a progressively different view towards tax going forward. And obviously the cost of electricity as well will be a significant factor that we would need to monitor very closely. With regard to your second point about public use of council charging facilities, the transport planning team have for a number of years been involved in installing charging infrastructure throughout the council area for public use, and the council also makes use of these in selected places. And going forward, we will be looking to creating a blend of locations for charging hubs that would serve both public and council. Though clearly we would need to make sure that from a council perspective, we had enough charging infrastructure in place to ensure that we were able to get our vehicles out every day to deliver service, and so that we weren't necessarily beset by the potential difficulties of public use of charging positions as parking spaces or for legitimate charging purposes.
Thank you for that. Noah Kugali, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, my question's on the analysis that's gone into our use of HVOs more broadly. The first of which is what work's been done to look into the long-term price volatility of HVOs compared to diesel. And then the second as to whether we've done work looking at the CO2 or general environmental impact well to wheel rather than just tailpipe emissions of HVO rather than diesel. And yeah, just be good to know whether we've gone into that kind of depth making this decision.
I think if I would be right in saying the on the HVO tailpipe emissions, it's just changing the fuels. The engines are exactly the same. So if what you meant was the construction of the vehicle would have the same carbon footprint.
No,
are you talking about the
production
the
of
creation
HVO
of the
as well.
production of the HVO? I'll leave that for the experts then.
Thanks for the question. Whilst I'm not an expert in the field, Councillor Kigali's first question was about the price comparison between HVO and diesel, and that's something that we're acutely aware of, and we monitor it on a constant basis. We currently procure our fuel through the Scottish government approved procurement sources, and that includes HVO and diesel. So we've noticed over the last 2 to 3 years that HVO has to some degree tracked the price of diesel, but has been consistently higher. But we're at the mercy of the marketplace in terms of getting the cheapest fuel, and the suppliers that we engage to supply our fuel, obviously cost is a major factor in that respect, but I envisage that it will be a constant preoccupation going forward in terms of monitoring that. And yeah, just to reinforce Councillor Waters' comments about CO2 and tailpipe emissions and the kind of wider picture with regard to HVO, we haven't done any primary research ourselves as a council on that subject, and we have taken industry data to inform our carbon calculations. Thanks.
Any supplementary, Noah, or are you okay?
Yeah, well, on that last point, I suppose my concern would be that if you're just looking at the tailpipe emissions, that you might create a situation where you're not really looking at the full picture. If the well to wheel is higher, and say there's a more carbon intensive feedstock going into that HVO, I'm just slightly concerned that we might be patting ourselves on the back a little bit too much there. If there is that there is a risk that it's not as environmentally beneficial as we might want it to be, because of potentially a more carbon intensive feedstock.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And we have been aware of the controversy, if that's the right word, regarding the use of virgin palm oil in particular, which has been very much in the press in recent months in particular. And so much so that we got a written confirmation from our supplier about their position with regards to virgin palm oil and the other feedstocks. And the energy provider has explicitly stated to us that it does not supply HVO with virgin palm oil. And there are various regulatory frameworks in place, including EU's RED II and the UK's RTFO. I don't know what those acronyms stand for, so my apologies. But they work within all the prevailing international requirements to ensure that the sources of HVO are of the highest quality and meet all prevailing regulations.
Thank you for that. Fraser, want to come in.
Thank you. Just to say that we're happy to do just a little bit of additional research into that and provide a briefing back to committee members. So just to provide some assurance around that and the current position.
Grant Stewart.
Thank you. I'm following on about the HVO as well on 5.5 in the paper, and you alluded it in your presentation about the 15 pence. And I imagine that's quite a crude calculation in a way, but because you have made reference about within that 15 pence, we're reducing our carbon. But also, if we were to use a voluntary carbon credit scheme, we'd have to pay for that. That would reduce that cost of 15 pence even further. Would I be right in thinking that?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, so I'm not sure is the answer to your question. In terms of carbon credits, we've noticed a slight change in that approach initially to kind of pump prime the public and businesses to get into the LEV frame of mind. There were significant incentives around providing vehicles that were subsidised. And we certainly took advantage of that as a council in the earlier years of this process. In terms of going forward, though, I'm not sure what the relationship between HVO price and carbon credit would be. And I'd be happy to go away and do a little bit of work on that to give you a question which I'm struggling to answer just now.
Thank you. Okay, Grant. Cool. Councillor Dave Cuthbert, and then it will be David Illingworth.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I've got my Tayside contracts hat on again. I'm having done the carbon literacy training. I'm very pleased to see that we're decarbonising our fleet. But I was just wondering, technically, Tayside Contracts is a part of this council. It's a division, if you like. And I'm wondering, are we passing on our targets to them? Are they included in our targets? And are we discussing the things we're doing, like the HVO, with them to see whether they can do it? There was talk about that recently within the Tayside Contracts, but I don't know if that's happening or not.
Nigel.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that question. And so, yes, is the broad answer to the questions that you've raised on a number of different levels. So, first of all, we procure our fuel from Tayside Contracts in Blairgowrie. So we fill up there and use their fuel. We're also in the process of exploring with Tayside Contracts joint use of HVO tanks in Blairgowrie, specifically because our depots are side by side. And on a more local basis as well, we're coming off the subject of HVO. We're also exploring the possibility and have recently signed a new service level agreement with Tayside Contracts for them to maintain PKC council vehicles from their workshop in Blairgowrie. So we have got a number of irons in the fire with TC to make sure that we are going forward in a joint manner. The other thing that I would add to that is that strategically, Tayside Contracts have been in our discussions with regards to the rollout of charging infrastructure at depots, most notably at Ruthven Field, where the shared occupation of that, what is essentially a PKC depot with Amy and with TC, has been very much in the conversation and will continue to be so. But I think that on a local level, it's the Blairgowrie developments which have been of most significant interest with regards to our ongoing partnership with them.
Thank you. if Fraser Croft just wants to come in with this.
It would just add to that, a specific piece of work we've asked the 2 fleet managers to work on is the introduction of HVO to the winter fleet. Within the Perth and Kinross area. So that's a piece of work that we're looking to try and roll out for next winter.
Thank you. Thank you, Fraser. Back.
Just to say, if all the HVO is in Blairgowrie, are we looking to distribute it to other depots like the Kinross one and Aberfeldy, whatever?
Sorry, I misinformed you, or I gave you the wrong impression there. It's not just Blairgowrie where the HVO is. We're looking to we have got HVO in Blairgowrie, but we've also got a tank in Perth, one in Crieff, and we're looking to get one in Pitlochry as well. Our intention being that all the depots will have HVO tanks going forward, and we're trying to do that within a very restricted cost envelope, which is and the disappearance of red diesel has really helped us in that respect. We can reuse the what used to be the red diesel tanks to do this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. David?
Thank you, convener. When this committee approved the use of HVO in February last year, we were told that the cost was going to be between £50,000 and £75,000. Do you have any idea what the actual cost so far has been?
Nigel?
Don't, as I sit here, but would be more than happy to go back and get that to give you an accurate answer.
Do you want supplementary, David? Or
do we know how many litres of, roughly, how many litres of diesel we need to buy for the HGVs across the whole council per year, roughly? Is it millions? Is it hundreds of thousands?
It's thousands. So it's an extremely high cost part of our fleet budget.
Okay,
you go and say, okay,
thank you.
From questions, you okay?
Yep. So do we have any figure? You're planning to extend HVO. Do we have any figure for how much that extension of HVO will cost?
I don't have the exact number at this time, but I can provide it to you within the next week, if that's okay.
I think if Nigel goes away and gets all these figures and get some to you, the specific details you're looking for.
It does concern me that we're making decisions without actually knowing how much they're going to cost. The 15 pence a litre is an extra cost that we may be able to avoid having.
Fraser?
So we've set out in the report the estimated cost. We understand here there's a question around about the actual cost. What we're providing is a range. We know that range in cost per litre has changed, and indeed it was slightly higher. I think it was about 20 pence a litre, Nigel, previously, and it was down to about 15 pence a litre. My understanding is that in terms of the current rollout with the 18 refuse vehicles, approximately half of that cost, the estimated cost here of £100,000, would be associated with the refuse vehicles, and the other half of that would be associated with the rest of the heavy fleet. Obviously, the refuse vehicles are not particularly efficient in terms of fuel economy, so that's a substantive part of, I think, 80 vehicles we're saying in total heavy fleet. 26 of those are refuse vehicles, and about half of the additional cost is from our refuse vehicles. So if we work on the broad basis that the estimates are 100k in total for the provision of HVO, subject to market price change, that's the ballpark here that we're operating with in terms of this report.
And that's £100,000 every year.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
So just a general point on the control of cost as it relates to fuel, and I'm including all types of fuel that the council uses for its vehicles: petrol, diesel, and HVO. We have a budget for that at the moment, and we would intend that the existing budget would be sufficient to deal with all our costs going forward. This doesn't, the additional cost of HVO litre over diesel is not something that we feel will result in a massive additional cost pressure for the council, given the fact that we've built in price fluctuation possibilities into our budget, because petrol and diesel are subject to significant price fluctuations. I did make reference earlier on to the fact that we were going to delay the rollout of HVO to the full HGV fleet because of our concerns about cost. But I think that we're all always going to be subject to the vagaries of the marketplace when it comes to pricing for any type of fuel, whether HVO, diesel, petrol. Thanks.
Right, I'm going to move. Is it another question, or you'll have a chance for comments at the end of this? Andrew.
Thanks, Raj. At the moment, we've been talking in terms of additional costs associated with doing what we perceive as being the right thing, and that's reducing our carbon emissions. But more generally, what are the prospects at the moment for more generalized carbon charging and carbon quotas, so that the work that we're doing now to reduce our vehicle fleet's dependency on carbon fuels may actually in the future lead to costs avoided? What is the prospect for that carbon charging and carbon quotas at the moment? Thanks.
So thanks for the question. We haven't given any consideration for carbon charging and carbon quotas as part of this exercise. It's an area that we would be very interested in looking at going forward. I suspect there might well be a political and strategic element to that particular issue. So going forward, we'll watch that space with interest, I think, is how I would reply to it.
And you're just going to get Davinder to come in here.
Just to add to that, while the Scottish Government is looking to be bringing in carbon budgets and will be bringing in the first one, sort of announcing a sort of September time currently, and these will be translated down to the local authority level, there's currently not carbon penalties identified that have been linked with these budgets. They're currently targets just at the moment, but it is something we will keep a watching eye on.
Thank you, Davinder. Sorry, get back to my sheet to see who's next. Angus, your second question.
I'm going to set aside the question I had in mind, if I may take us back to the costs. I'm really sorry, Nigel, of the HVO thing, and you've answered all those questions so well. You clearly know this stuff. I have no doubt that you'll have the answer to this one. The kind of notional 15p that's referenced in the report, one thing that hadn't occurred to me when I was reading it, but your answers to previous questions did bring this out. Does that include the costs of buying tanks and putting them in different depots and transferring the stuff around the area, or is it purely the differential between diesel and HVO?
Thanks. It's purely the differential between the cost of diesel and HVO. There's no recognition of the costs that we've brought upon ourselves by making the changes to tanks and so forth. And we've been trying to do that in an economic way within existing council budgets without any recourse to committee for additional funding. So we're trying to do that within existing budgets.
Thank you. Grant Stewart, your second question.
Thank you. In 5.8 in the paper, there's reference to the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund and the fleet team working closer together, which is great to hear. And in the previous paper, we heard reference to Perth and Kinross being the big tree country. When you're looking at expanding the electric charging points across Perth and Kinross, is that going to be infrastructure just purely for PKC and then the public can use? Or are we looking at how visitors can come here and explore the area and there's a good network in a range of places?
Yeah, very much. As you described there, we want to make sure that Perth and Kinross Council has a charging infrastructure which meets the needs of all its visitors, its residents, in as far as publicly available charging infrastructure is concerned, and specifically PKC, so that we can deliver all our services. And so in order to achieve that, I would envisage that we would have a blend of some sites which are council only use, and I might, the example might be a depot, Friarton depot. We wouldn't want the public coming in there to charge their vehicles, because we would want to make sure that was focused entirely on council vehicles, to guarantee that we could put all our vehicles out in the morning. But in other places, such as car parks, there are many examples. We have a map. When I say we, the transport planning team have been gradually rolling out infrastructure in different places throughout PKC. There are lots of dots on the map now, and so that's quite an encouraging visual sign of the progress that's been made over the past few years and the investment that's been put into creating charging infrastructure. So we're not starting from scratch. There's already a momentum behind that, and it would be incumbent on the council to make sure that funding continues to be made, and that we make sure that we've got enough charging in place for everyone who needs it.
Thank you. Angus, your third question.
Nigel, I'm desperate to find a question that you don't know the answer to, so we'll give it a go. There's reference to an HGVs, both electric for the future and hydrogen for the future, and I'm only asking your opinion on this one. I know you won't know the answer, but which is likely to come first?
That's a very good question. At the moment, there are both electric and hydrogen refuse collection vehicles on the market at the moment, but they are an RCV costs about £225,000. A diesel one, an electric one costs about £450, and a hydrogen one costs about £850. So that reflects the different pace of technology development, and it's fair to say the technology development with HGVs has been much slower than with cars. Going forward, the industry preference would appear to be directed towards hydrogen, because it seems to be the case that in order for a heavy vehicle to run on electric, you need a massive amounts of battery, which goes to weight and so forth. Whereas the mood music in the industry seems to be that hydrogen is going to be the fuel of the future for heavy vehicles. So that's why a potentially exciting development with this project going forward is the fact that there is a very real possibility that PKC might have a local source of hydrogen going forward. So we're well placed to take advantage of developments in that respect.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm going to have to try harder for my next question, Nigel. No, that's completely fine. I totally understand that. It just remind me, is hydrogen completely? It produces no greenhouse gases at all. Is that the case?
During the generation of hydrogen, my understanding is the greenhouse gases are generated. To what extent, I'm not sure. But if we're talking about tailpipe, then my understanding is that there is a nil.
There's different colours of hydrogen. It's worth a look at. I don't know how many different colours there are, a dozen or something. And it depends on the energy that's getting used to create the hydrogen. So green hydrogen is more environmentally friendly. You have other colours of hydrogen that will use fossil fuel energy that's generated to create so you need energy to create the hydrogen. So it depends on where that energy is coming from as well, would play a big part on it. But the ones that are being talked about locally would be green hydrogen. So it would be out of excess over energy created from wind farms that would be used to do it. And there is just on that, and if you have got access to your calendar, the council have been doing feasibility study work with Ricardo, I think the name of the company was, on the potential of hydrogen, and there should have been a request sent out to people to get a briefing on the outcomes of that, to which will look at what the potentials are of hydrogen, and it's still a moving picture, so that's still something that would have to be seen and looked at. Okay. Grant Stewart.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thinking about the resilience of our electric vehicles, that's great to see that we're expanding the number of sites. So if there's a catastrophic event, one vehicles could be charged somewhere else. So that's great to see. I was thinking about battery electric storage systems, which we have a few in Perth and Kinross now. If we're moving to more electric vehicles, have we got resilience in our system? To have like battery storage that vehicles can be charged if we take Spain and Portugal, the system's going down there.
Again, that's another good point, and we don't have extensive distribution of battery storage systems in place at the moment. We have one at Friarton Depot, which was installed a little while ago, but we're not fully able to exploit its potential. And also, that particular thing is something that technology appears to be developing in quite a lot, and I know that our colleagues in economic development, Mike Figures, has been very active in looking at battery storage, specifically at Broxden, along with Broxden being a hydrogen hub of the future as well. So that to me represents another exciting potential avenue that we can pursue and to make use as well as which is the case at Friarton, where we've got solar panels on the roofs, and that electricity would be generated, it would be stored, and it would then charge our electric vehicles. So that's the kind of circularity, if you like, to use a popular term at the moment, of what we would intend to do and to replicate where possible in other locations too.
Thank you. Hey, Grant.
It's all right. Thanks. Just a couple of points. There's been a lot of interesting questions here around HVO, and Nigel's done manfully to try and answer them. And I don't mean to disrespect him, but the expert who has brought it forward before is Mr. Taggart, and unfortunately I believe due to personal circumstances, he can't be here today. So I was wondering if the convener and vice convener, along with officers, might be happy to have just a briefing session where people, because you can send out the answers to questions that being that Councillor Forbes and others have put forward, but then that leads to another question. So even just a half an hour sometime briefing session on that where Mr. Taggart's there as well as yourself, if that would be possible. And while we've been in this meeting, Michael Figures has sent us out that there's a briefing session, and others may have seen it, on the hydrogen component as well. So that'll be really worth going on June the 4th in the banking hall. And also, if we're going to have a half an hour offline discussion about this with Mr. Taggart, we could maybe have a little update on the EV charging stuff as well that Councillor Stewart's been asking for. So that's my question, if that's going to be possible, or would it be a sensible option?
I think definitely. I think getting a session, a workshop, a wee session with Pat Taggart would be hugely beneficial. And we'll certainly look at getting something in with that. There is a workshop planned for the EVIF fund more, isn't it? Coming up at some point. Aye, I think there is a separate work. I think there's a workshop, but I'm not sure if that includes the fleet charging, or it'll just be the electric vehicle infrastructure fund workshop that's coming up with Neil Moran, and that I believe is coming up as well. So, but good suggestions, and we will look at seeing what we can get there.
Oh,
no, that would be great. Pat would really relish that, and you've correctly identified that the driving force behind this report and the whole of Perth and Kinross Council's approach to its decarbonisation is thanks to Pat. He's done a fantastic job since he's joined Perth and Kinross Council, and one of the paragraph 3.2 in the report refers to the fact that he's been invited to take part by Transport Scotland on their body that would be looking to produce a roadmap for change for the future. So he will be right at the epicentre of that, and will therefore be fully informed on government thinking, as well as using his expertise to inform our way forward technologically as well.
Thanks.
I don't have any more questions coming up here. We're all good. Stole my initial part of my, a huge thanks, Nigel, for coming along and presenting this. But the real, Pat Taggart has done a huge amount of work behind the scenes with this strategy, and to look at how the council's fleet will go forward within the council, in line with our climate change ambitions as a council. So just a huge thanks to Pat for the work he's done, not just in writing this report, but all the stuff in the background that's allowed our bin lorries now to be running HVO, and with our fleet management going forward. This report seeks our approval for the latest decarbonisation update for the Perth and Kinross Council fleet. We have a moral and regulatory duty to aim towards a low carbon future, and this report describes the key activities to be undertaken in aiming for and complying with this goal. Following on the last report to this committee on this subject in February last year, this report is a further significant step forward in mapping out a medium-term strategy to decarbonise our fleet. It recommends a measured approach which tracks timetabled changes enacted by both the UK and Scottish governments, increases the number of low-emission vehicles in our fleet, develops options and spreads costs of charging infrastructure over a longer period, and in doing so enables us to take advantage of improvements in technology, such as increased range with electric vehicles and lower electric vehicles purchase costs. We are looking to build upon the success of the refuse collection vehicles HVO trial by extending the use of HVO to all refuse collection vehicles with an eventual estimated saving of around 725 tonnes of carbon per annum, with further reductions coming from the remainder of the Perth and Kinross HGVs being changed to HVO by the end of this year. We are also looking to review options for suitable charging infrastructure, which would run concurrently with the development of our pool fleet vehicle fleet. A separate report on pool cars will be forthcoming later this year. We are lucky to be close to the Bin Group site near Glenfarg, where Green Cat Hydrogen are located, and are therefore well placed to potentially develop a working partnership bringing forward the possibility of a hydrogen trial for Perth and Kinross HGVs in the years ahead. I welcome the opportunity to follow progress of the fleet journey towards a low carbon future. And again, I would just like to thank all the officers involved and look forward to further reports towards the end of the year, providing a progress report. I am happy to accept the recommendations within this report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Liz Barrett to second this?
Thank you, Convener. I'd just like to add my thanks to Pat Taggart for the achievements that we've made so far in this direction, and to Nigel for presenting this report. I strongly value the measured and pragmatic approach that we're taking to decarbonising the fleet, and I very much welcome the carbon savings that are being made already through the use of HVO within our agreed budgets, and I'm very pleased to second this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I notice, Councillor Illingworth, you have an amendment. Do you want to? Do we have the amendment available? Right. Do you want to speak with it, or do you want to wait until we get copies of it?
I'm happy to speak to it. Like Liz and yourself, I'm happy with almost all of this report. I like the fact that it's a gradual and pragmatic approach to moving our fleet onto alternative forms of fuel. However, the real world is changing very, very quickly. Since we last met in October, we've got a new president of the United States, and I'm sure the opinions of all the members and all the people in this room of that president are virtually unanimous, but he is the elected president of the United States. And his view is drill, baby, drill. And at the same time, in the People's Republic of China, we've got a train line transporting 500,000 tons of coal every day from Mongolia to the power stations in Shenzhen. I think that if we adopt more HVO, it's like a drop in the ocean. It's like trying to whistle in a hurricane. It will have virtually zero impact on the carbon reductions across the globe, because this is a global issue. And at the same time, we're incurring extra costs that we just don't need to have. So my motion is that the proposal to extend HVO use to all council HGVs by the end of 2025 is not approved. The funds identified for this HVO extension, estimated at £100,000 per annum, shall instead be allocated to supporting and enhancing rural bus routes within Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can we just check, Councillor Forbes, you're happy?
Can this committee redirect funding that's going to, we've got transport funding and we've got funding for fuel for the fleet. I don't think this committee, I think this is an incompetent motion. And so I don't think it can be accepted, but that's my view and I'm looking for clarity. So that's my point of clarity I'm asking.
Thank you. So double checked with the amendment that the wording should be going up hopefully on the screen very shortly. The point is well made that the competency of the request itself, we believe, is competent insofar as the decision around HVO against local bus routes. That the financial decision is not a decision this committee can take and would need to be remitted back to Finance and Resources Committee. That's my understanding. So we can deal with the first part, which is the principle that we don't invest in HVO and that we seek, or this committee seeks, to transfer the funding to support local bus. But the final decision on that in terms of the financial impact in accordance with the scheme of administration would be for Finance and Resources Committee to homologate, I suppose, essentially.
Can I just ask if we can just take a 5 or 10 minute recess at this point just to chat through some of the implications, or not the implications, the clarity around whether this is competent. So 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can come back. If we can come, whether that's before or after, I'm not sure. We know you want to, you will do it. So we're right, thanks for the patience there with that small recess there. We've had the wording for the amendment was slightly amended, I believe, and it's now on the screen for everybody to view. I'll just give everybody a minute just to read that. Councillor Forbes, you wish to formally second this amendment.
I do, convener. Thank you. For some bizarre reason, yesterday I found myself watching a debate in the Scottish Parliament. No idea why that happened, but Fergus Ewing was talking, and he was talking about a topic very similar to this, and he pointed out that the UK has responsibility for 1% of the world's carbon output. He then went on to say that Scotland is responsible for 1/10 of that 1%. PKC will be a fraction of that 1/10 of that 1%, and what we're debating today regarding HVO will be a tiny fraction of that tiny fraction of the 1/10 of the world's output. I think it's reasonable to argue that what we're talking about in terms of output will be completely unmeasurable at these margins that we're discussing. The proposal to put whatever savings we can, this £100,000 estimate, towards generating to put more people onto buses, I think is quite valid, because I think we could easily argue that having more people on buses will also reduce our carbon output, but importantly it will help constituents Perth and Kinross. Now, Councillor Laing was willing in the last budget to take 2 proposals from my ward alone to support rural public transport, so I'm grateful to him for that, and I think it demonstrates that he is as keen on this as I am. And I think the argument that if we get people onto public transport will help our carbon output, but it'll also help people get about their daily lives. And whilst we must all do what we can to save the planet, we must also think about the people that we're here to represent, the people of Perth and Kinross. And I think the proposal that we're putting forward today will help our carbon output right on the margin, but will also help the people of Perth and Kinross. And I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Can I just, anybody open this up to comments? David Illingworth, Angus Forbes, Councillor Liz Barrett and myself, as movers and seconders of the motion and the amendment, are not able to comment on this, but opened up for everybody else. Andrew.
Thanks, Raj. I was very interested to hear what Davindi had to say about the matter of carbon quotas, and I can't believe that it will be very long after we have carbon quotas that there is some sort of incentivization in the form of benefits, penalties for reaching those carbon quotas. So that's of interest. And I'm perhaps straying onto Councillor Welch's area of expertise here. But it is a worry that we become very reliant on electricity, and we can have as much battery storage of electricity as we like, but if it still relies on a network grid connection to the point of use, then if we have these major grid outages, then that storage doesn't serve us. And so perhaps locally we need to think about direct connection between our own stored electricity and our own offtake points. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant?
Thanks, and yes, I'm glad that Councillor Forbes followed on the coattails of this administration, who's always wanted to provide as much funding to local bus services and public transport, unlike the Conservative motion from a few years ago through budget, which was willing to accept I think it was £125,000 cut. So it's good that they've had a vault face on how good public transport is. This is again the reason that we shouldn't do anything that we believe in, because is making a comment and we should just follow everybody else in the world, is not a view that I think. I think we should stand up for our principles. And this council has committed both to looking at extra rail travel, looking at obviously, and it can be evidence, looking at how to increase public transport with free buses on a Saturday and at other days that have been brought in. So I think it's a two-pronged approach, and yes, we will continue to keep funding local transport as much as we can. I think that we're talking about, again, money, and we're not talking about public health, the reduction in particulates, cleaner air that comes from this, and hopefully even further from the hydrogen production. We'll have to keep moving forward and stop looking backwards. So I fully support the motion, and I'm very glad to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Jack Welch.
Thank you, Convener. In terms of the actions that this council is taking to look at its environmental and its legal commitments around reductions in carbon as part of its activities, I think the council has demonstrated in the past it does move with ambition, but also with pragmatism, and the adoption, limited adoption of HVO, I think has been a significant success. It's particularly important to note that as well as reducing emissions of CO2 by up to 90%, it provides a significant reduction of particulate matter levels by typically up to 80%, and nitrogen oxides by up to 30%. These are all critical components of airborne pollution affecting our young children and adults in Perth and Kinross who may have, for example, asthma or other related breathing difficulties. So I think this would be an absolute backwards step, and as the proposer indicated, I think the last person we should be following is Donald Trump, and unfortunately, I think if that's the direction of travel that the proposer wants to, then he won't get my support. Thank you.
Councillor Dave Cuthbert.
Thank you, convener. Just to say that I will be voting with the motion, not so much for myself, more for my kids and my grandkids. My kids are very concerned about global warming, and it's not me that will be suffering from it, it's them in the future. So I'll be voting with the motion.
Thank you. Grant Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you for the paper. It was very clear and well written, and the discussion around that was very helpful. I attended the Net Zero conference at Dynamic Earth recently, and many of the presentations were talking about the ways forward. And it's gratifying to hear that Perth and Kinross Council are taking the lead in many of the topics that were discussed. This amendment is another trope. We've heard this kind of stuff before, and it's backward thinking. I will be voting for the motion.
Thank you. I have no other comments. Councillor Forbes. No, Councillor Illingworth, sorry. Councillor Illingworth, do you want to speak on your amendment?
Yeah, thank you, convener. In February last year, I asked, when HVO first came up, I asked the question, are there cheaper ways of achieving the same aims? And I didn't really get an answer at all. At the last meeting in October, I asked the question, are people in this room optimistic that we're going to make a difference? And well, the answer was, there wasn't an answer to that. I'm in politics to make a difference. I don't believe that using HVO will make any substantial difference. And I appreciate, I'm sure everybody has virtually the same thoughts about the legal elected new president. But he is the legal elected president, and the global world is not going to make any difference. So I'm concerned that we're spending £100,000 a year for virtually no difference. So I'm happy to support the amendment.
Thank you. We can all make a difference. There's no question about it. And breaking this down to in a worldwide stage that our difference is just non-existent. So there's no point of making it is really dangerous. It's a dangerous message to send out to the public, and it's we've brought in.
I think you said just a second ago that you and Councillor Barrett and myself wouldn't be able to make any further comment, and I think you are now just making that further.
Sorry, I'm summing up. Apologies, Councillor Forbes. I am allowed the opportunity to sum up myself as mover of the motion. Is that okay with you? Sorry, in fairness, I should have pointed out in my summing up. I will invite myself now to sum up. We can all make a difference, and bring in HVO with the benefits it has will make a huge difference within the remit that we can do it, and we will continue to make these small changes that will make a difference for future generations within Perth and Kinross, and hopefully if everyone does it and we keep doing it, it will make a difference worldwide as well. Council is committed to tackling the effects of climate change, and we have a clear strategy and action plan, and this is making good progress across numerous work streams within the council. Transport is a key contributor to carbon emissions, and something that we do have control within the council over. And part of the climate change motion that came forward, which the mover and seconder of this motion I believe, did back when it went forward. And we were to lead by example, and the proposed changes for moving from diesel to HVO for our heavy fleet will provide significant, not just a significant carbon reduction within the council area. And it will impact, as Councillor Welsh pointed out, impact hugely on air quality for all the residents of Perth and Kinross, and contribute positively to our decarbonisation commitments. And it also leads the way within council. Other councils are looking at what we're doing and wanting to follow. And here we have an amendment to try and hold us back from these ambitions. Council recognises the challenges faced by our communities in terms of public transport. 8 years I've seen that reduction in bus transport services, and I know in other areas of the council we've seen it. We have, through our budget process, provided extra funding to support free bus travel, additional support for rural bus services, transfer the use of council minibuses to groups, and we are working on reviewing local bus provision as an alternative and more effective operating arrangement. And hugely, and certainly for me locally and Councillor Cuthbert locally, is Glenfarr Community Transport, which has made a huge difference to the amount of people that are using public transport. There's a lot of really positive stuff happening in there. We believe that we can make progress on both fronts. It's not an either or. You know, and the decarbonisation of our heavy fleet through the use of HVO provides significant benefits in terms of our decarbonisation commitment at a comparatively small cost compared to other investment options. And I would ask that everyone votes for the motion and votes to continue to address the climate change issues that we have within Perth and Kinross. Adam, can we go to the vote for this, please?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Members, we're dealing with item 5 on today's agenda, which is the fleet decarbonisation strategy. We have a motion proposed by yourself, Councillor Waters, and seconded by Councillor Liz Barrett, which is to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. We have an amendment proposed by Councillor Illingworth, seconded by Councillor Forbes, the details of which have been displayed on the screen. When I call your name, if you can indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Barrett. Councillor Cuthbert. Councillor Forbes. Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Kogali.
Amendment.
Councillor Lang. Deputy Provost Parrott. Councillor Grant Stewart. Convener.
Motion.
And Councillor Welsh. I have 7 votes for the motion, 4 votes for the amendment, therefore the motion will carry.
Thank you, everyone. The motion is passed and we will move on. Can I pass over to Councillor Liz Barrett to take the item 6 on today's agenda, Nature Restoration Fund? Can we, sorry, just apologies. Can we just check that Councillor Kugali can hear?
I can only hear the convener for some reason.
Can you hear that? Okay, that's better.
Yes.
Apologies for that. Do you need me to repeat any of that for yourself? Okay.
I've not heard anything since you began starting, but I'm sure I'll pick it up. It's okay.
Okay. So this project not only supports our goal of establishing 10 hectares of community woodlands by 2033, but also helps to provide a sustainable source of locally grown native trees that will be planted out to enhance biodiversity, create wildlife corridors, and contribute to Scotland's carbon sequestration targets. Next slide, please. So we've also been supporting work by the Rannoch and District Angling Club up at Altneagh, who are creating riparian woodland along the river. And next, please, to get the quote up. So they're thankful to the Nature Restoration Fund and supporting their project to plant trees along the banks of Altneagh River at the edge of Rannoch Moor. This will in time increase habitats, reduce erosion of the riverbanks and sediment washout, reduce water temperature increases and increase the number of invertebrates. Next slide, please. So as well as different community organisations, we've also supported the Scottish Wildlife Trust, with one of their reserves. So they've been restoring habitats up at Keltney Burn site of special scientific interest, which is home to nationally scarce wildflowers and priority species of butterflies. So over time, the blackthorn, which you can see is being removed there, has encroached on the wildflower meadow, threatening the open habitat required by key pollinators and orchid species. So by removing this scrub, there's been a lot of benefit to butterflies such as the northern brown argus and the small pearl bordered fritillary, and it will also help protect the diversity of wildflowers found here, including 8 species of orchid like the small white and the greater butterfly orchid. And in addition to meadow management, a nature pond on site was reinstated as well. And just to bring up the quote. We are grateful to Perth and Cross Council for supporting this wildlife reserve that has open access for the public to visit, bringing ongoing health and wellbeing benefits for people in the area and for those who visit to get close to the rare species of orchids and butterflies that find refuge here. Next slide, please. And the fund has also supported the River Erne Improvement Association in building local capacity to control invasive non-native species on the Erne and its tributaries. So Japanese knotweed and other invasive species outcompete native plants and contribute to soil erosion and riverbank instability. So their removal makes way for the return of native vegetation, which stabilises banks, reduces sediment and pollution entering the water, and creates better conditions for fish and invertebrates. And you can see on this image here, so this is Japanese knotweed on the left and Japanese knotweed after it's been treated on the right there. And just to bring up the quote again. So volunteers obtain qualifications, and this means we now have 6 people qualified, and each of the 4 local angling clubs, Comrie, Crieff, Auchterarder and Dunning, now have at least 1 member qualified and available to undertake control and containment of invasive non-native species until the Scottish Invasive Species Initiative commence work on the Erne system, scheduled for 2026, and thereafter be able to support CC. Thank you. So now that we're coming to the end of our final 5 years, we're planning to host presentations from various groups that have received nature restoration funding, and this will be either at the committee in February or as a members morning. So this is still to be planned, but will showcase all the nature restoration we have achieved over the past 5 years thanks to this funding. Thank you. Yeah, this was designed by the Nature Restoration Fund working group. So it was an attachment in one of the previous committees a few years ago, which is why we've not included it again. So it hasn't been changed since 2 years ago, which is why we've not included it. But I can forward that to you if you're interested in seeing that. Sorry, it's so the 40,000 there is so 15,000 in uncommitted from the year 24 to 25, and then also 25,000 of carryover from previous years where projects either weren't fulfilled completely or at all. So that's just been rolled on until this year. So that's on top of the 187,000 that we've been allocated this year that we'll be able to.
I'm happy to second the report. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of the business on the agenda. Can I just thanks everyone for your attendance today, and hope you all, the ones who are not in another committee this afternoon, you get at least a little bit of time in the sunshine and enjoy that as well. Thank you very much. Bye.